Hi everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I'm your host, Dr. Haider Shah. On behalf of Calvas, I would like to welcome all of you to this webinar. Thank you very much for joining us. Today we have another very interesting topic, and I'm really honored to welcome and introduce our distinguished guest speaker, who is going to talk about establishing an authorial voice in the academic writing process. Most of the time, students and researchers are confused on how to build an argument and how to use appropriate terminologies, as the argument is built through proper expressions of ideas and linkages, which require proper way of academic writing. So, really, very interesting topic, and I'm sure in this session you are going to learn so many new things, as we have an expert with us in today's this session. So, you will get the best guidance and right suggestions about all these things. So before we start, I would like to thank Carvas for arranging such enlightenment sessions, for their support and providing us such a wonderful platform. The aim of Carvas is to give you the opportunity to connect and interact with world-renowned speakers, academic leaders, teachers, authors, researchers, experts, professionals, and businessmen to learn from their experiences, recommendations, and suggestions, which will create an impact and will enable you to learn and develop yourself in order to grow and transform individually as well as to contribute to the world in a positive way. As our slogan is come, learn, and share knowledge. So today we have an amazing person as guest. She has a wonderful experience, internationally known and recognized speaker. She is a great contributor and performing multiple tasks. We always see her while contributing to the world on different platforms. So let me introduce her formally. She is a senior high school educator of the Department of Education Division of ABRA. She specializes in accountancy, business, and management. She holds a bachelor degree in tourism from the University of Santo Thomas, Manila. Completed her master's in business administration from the Divine Word College, Bangor, Abra, and finished her doctorate in business administration from the University of Northern Philippines. Moreover, she has served as Dean of Tourism, Hospitality, and Business Programs, a professor in graduate school for several years. She has also accredited trainer and assessor of the Technical Educational Skills Development Authority. Her designations extensively taught her valuable experiences as she has jointly collaborated and networked with the fellow educators in different countries. She has been a recipient of research grants that allowed her to further hone her craft as a researcher and has published in international referred and peer-reviewed journals. In addition to that, she is a peer reviewer of several prestigious journals and has been a judge in international presentations, served as a speaker at national and international conferences, and appointed as International Head of Social Sciences and Management Welfare Association, India, and used to be affiliated with the International Society of Teachers, Administrators, Researchers as the Philippine Deputy National Director. Last but not the least, she is a wonderful speaker, author, teacher, researcher, professional, and above everything, a great human being. So please help me in welcoming our guest, Dr. Bless Maricar Ramos. Welcome to the Calvas platform, and thank you very much for joining us, Prof.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Shah, for that introduction. And of course, a pleasant good evening to all from the Philippines. It's 9 p.m. here now. And good morning and good afternoon to wherever you are right now. So, my immense gratitude for being part of this conference, which is actually organized by the Center of Academic Learning, Writing, and Support Services, and all the members of the organizing committee. And of course, to Dr. Haider Shah for personally inviting me to be here. Thank you very much.
It's really
Okay, so
pleasure to
my
have you,
topic.
Prof. Yeah. So before we get started, let me just tell you the format about this session that Prof will be presenting, and he would leave time for question answer session at the end of the session. You can ask question through comment section, or you can email us at info@carwas.com. So over to you, Prof. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much, Doctor. Okay, so my topic tonight is establishing authorial voice in the academic writing process. Okay, so the shifts in discourse theory have often been accompanied by changed conceptions of voice. Okay, one shift occurred when this term, which has been used only for oral language before, and then came to be used for written language too. So began referring to distinctive ways of writing, which is actually associated with particular authors and thus became a near synonym for style. Okay, so how do you use voice in academic writing? First, we have what we call direct voice, which is used to express your own ideas in your own voice, and the ideas and arguments expressed in the voice of another writer. Whereas an indirect voice is used when you summarize or paraphrase someone else's ideas or argument. Okay, so when we say authorial voice or authorial style, that could actually mean different to many different people also. But let us try to establish a definition which is actually understood by many. Okay, so what is an authorial voice? So it could be a writer's unique tone, choice of words, selection of subject matter, and even punctuation make up the authorial voice. It is also how an author writes, conveys their attitude, personality, and even character. Okay, so it is also an author's voice, which is often so distinctive that it's possible to identify the author by merely reading a selection of their work. Okay, so let us try to examine our evolution as a writer, especially in the educational process as researchers. Okay, so we may have been writing for quite some time now, but what could be the most important improvement we have done? To say, personally, I would say developing our authorial style could be because having your own voice allows you to stand out from the rest. Okay, so style and authorial voice. Your writing style should be persuasive and at the same time it also be authoritative. Okay, so meaning your argument should really be crystal clear to your readers and not to forget to fit in your topics or issues to that of the others. There are actually strategies that we can use in authorial writing that can help create a clearer sense of you as the writer and how you demonstrate your commitment to your ideas and that of other writers. Okay, so it is also essential to bear in mind that academic writing in your discipline or field can affect coherence in your writing style, including how you present yourself in your voice in writing. Okay, this can also help you shape how you, of course, develop arguments and incorporate evidences, reference other scholarly studies, even organize, present, and discuss your data, and of course, lay out and discuss tables, figures, graphs, including maps. So when it comes to developing your voice and achieving clarity, cohesion, and conciseness in your writing, you must consider that this involves context of your own discipline because this would mean you comprehend how your research has been communicated in the community. Okay, so distinguishing your ideas. Let us not also forget that when writing in the academics or in the academe, we usually use language of critical analysis rather than the more informal language. Okay, one of the reasons for using this more formal language is the concern that the ideas of other writers should not only be referenced but analyzed, okay, also critiqued and evaluated to develop a reasoned argument. Let us also remember that even your voice of language shows how you analyze, how you critique, and how you evaluate the ideas you write about. Okay, let us also take note that the more you put writing with so much description, the less space you will have for your arguments. So it is important to use academic language because this prompts your readers identify the level of your writing ability. Okay, let us not forget that the goal here is preciseness and conciseness of the ideas being written. So when you are taking notes from your readings, make a point that you have a system to clearly distinguish the following. Okay, so material from other sources that you are paraphrasing. So meaning to say, putting into your own words Okay, direct quotations from other sources where you are reproducing the exact wording of an author and your observations, views, or even your comments that you wish to document. Okay. Also, always clarify that the ideas you are discussing belongs to you or another writer so as not to confuse your readers or they miss your substantial insights. Okay, so on the express of relationship between sources. So when sources are discussed, you can also show your analysis by using key phrases to explain the relationship between your sources. For example, when you wish to highlight similarities between your sources, you could use, okay, similarly, Koyman argues that. Okay, another one, like Snedneck, Lehman views. And then, though, draws on Snowball's work to examine. Okay, these are just examples. Okay, so when you wish to highlight contrasting ideas, you could also adopt the following words and phrases. So in contrast, Sylvie notes, that is one of the examples. Woodham takes issues with McCartney's view that, okay, while Yin agrees with Taffy that, she ultimately argues against the notion that. Okay, so in inconsistencies or disagreements have emerged over or unlikely contrary to the view that. Okay, these are just examples. So having a variety of reporting verbs and phrases on hand can help you to clearly express your views on your sources. Okay, so establishing a strong authorial voice. So there are actually certain best-selling writers have notedly distinctive voices as writers. Okay, just merely reading a few paragraphs of their written output, you are already able to recognize their signature tone. So finding your authorial voice or authorial writing voice rather can help you reach new levels as a unique singular author. Okay. So here are 5 steps to establish a strong authorial voice. Number 1, okay, is to determine your point of view. Ask yourself, are you writing this research in the first place? Or are you only interested to study a certain phenomenon or what? Because scholars pursue the craft of writing for different reasons, and knowing or even understanding your own intentions will help or guide you develop and establish a strong authorial voice, including your own style. Okay. Second, we have pick a consistent voice for your study. Okay, most academic papers like exposition, persuasion, and even research papers are actually written in third person. So referring to other authors and researchers from credible and academic sources to support your argument rather than stating your own personal experiences. Okay. Number 3, we have think about sentence structure and word choice. So when we say sentence structure here, it is the physical nature of a sentence and how the elements of the sentence are actually being presented. Okay, so just like word choice, writers should strive to vary their sentence structure to create a variation to keep their readers interested. Sentences and words used require variation, not repetition. Okay, so adopting specific policies about word choice and sentence structure will further establish your own voice as an author. Okay, even something as elemental as using short or long sentences can completely change the tone and feel of the author's voice. Number 4, find a balance in the description. So to be able to create balance in the academic writing, first, make sure you understand the study you want to do. Okay, so you need to search for supporting research you might need to help that may help you develop your ideas. Then write a draft expressing your own understanding. And then after which, Weave in selected bits of research to support those ideas. And of course, you also need to make sure that your voice is heard since you are the writer or the researcher. A paper that lacks your own thoughts is essentially a paper that reports what others have written. And number 5, write all the time. Establishing your authorial voice takes time. Experiment with different voices and writing styles. Okay, let your mind wander, and write for writing's sake can be a powerful tool because you allow your mind to unearth an unconscious writing style. It often takes many years and thousands of pages for a writer's true voice to emerge. So be patient with yourself. Good writing takes time, and establishing an authorial voice can take even longer. So, establishing authorial voice in writing is an important goal because it demonstrates a writer's understanding of originality. Once writer researchers find their authorial voice, they will have an increased capacity to write any subject which they want to study. Okay, encouraging further self-directed learning because forming unique ideas and thoughts is a core component of voice and thus further scaffolding to learn. Okay, since authorial voice is the combination of your writing tone, sentence structure, patterns, and perspective. Okay, it is said to be a stamp on your writing that makes your work personal and recognizable. So much so that your audience can identify a sample of writing as yours without even seeing or reading your name. Okay, so as a writer, establishing your authorial voice seems like an intimidating task, but it really makes all the difference in how you will receive as a writer. Okay, so presently, in the world of publishing, there are so many talented authors saturating the market, and standing out among the crowd can seem almost very impossible. So this is one of the reasons why establishing authorial voice is so essential. Hey, you can ask yourself what kind of writer you want to be, and then decide what experience you want your reader to have. Okay, it is as simple as all you have to do is be yourself. Find inspiration from your favorite writers and allow it to guide you, establish your authorial style. Remember that part of being a writer is being a reader too. Okay, so knowing what draws you to the writer is actually crucial in establishing your own authorial voice. Everyone has an influence. Just don't lose your voice trying to emulate someone else. So, as a writer, everyone might be a little crazy to do what they want to do. So, make sure you're doing it in a way that makes you happy. Put in mind that whatever you are writing about, your study is important and your voice is actually needed. Okay, so in other words, authorial voice is an element that doesn't change. It is your signature. You are known for this. Okay, everyone always starts in a beginning. Establishing your authorial voice should not be a problem at all because authorial voice is something one has to discover. If you're developing yourself, you don't have to worry because authorial voice is something you discover, not force, and not force into existence. It falls into place much later in the writing journey, and sometimes people can't predict what their signature is until it emerges. Your authorial voice will be yours alone. That sense of authorial voice will get stronger the longer you write. But I would encourage you all to read, to add lenses, to more stylized voice that are going to be unique to everyone. Okay? Struggling to establish authorial voice? It's usually the last writing element to fall into place. You can always work toward your own authorial voice style. Just focus, you get support, and do action in any way. Okay, so now let's move on to the rules and conventions of academic writing. So we have here the basic grammar rules for academic writing. Okay, so the materials that I will be using in this discussion are actually based on a material first developed by Hazel Hall at Queen Margaret University College in November 1998. This merits consideration to the world's top 10 of boring documents. However, if you want to do well in your academic writing, you need to get the basics right. If you don't get these little things correct, then the perceived integrity of your work as a whole is at risk. So always proofread your work to remove the surface glitches so that the value of your hard work shines through. Okay. So these are the rules. We have rule 1, you must write in sentences. Rule 2, subjects and verbs in sentences must agree with each other. Rule 3, you must use appropriate punctuations. Rule 4, you must use the right vocabulary. Rule 5, you must use the apostrophe correctly and with care. Okay, so let us talk about this one by one. Okay, so for rule 1, you must write in sentences. Okay, so sentences have the following characteristics. They start with a capital letter, end with a full stop, exclamation mark or question mark. They contain a verb, and then writers commonly make the mistake of not writing in full sentences because they fail to provide a main clause in their sentence, or write very long rambling sentences that would be better chopped into smaller ones. Okay, short, clear sentences are usually more effective than those which are long and complex. If you are in any doubt, split up any longer sentences into 2 or 3 shorter ones. This advice is especially important if you find writing difficult or English is not your first language. Short sentences will help you avoid grammatical mistakes and make it easy for the reader to follow your line of argument. So each sentence that you write should make sense if it were read out independently of the sentence before and after it. Okay, so rule number 2, subjects and verbs in sentences must agree with each other. So if the subject of a sentence is singular, then the verb form must be singular as well. So the student passes the exam. In this example, the student is the subject. There is just one student, so the subject is singular. Okay, the verb is to pass and agrees with the singular object. If this sentence described the activity of several students, the subject would be plural. So the verb agreement should reflect this. The students pass the exam. Okay, problems can occur with case agreement in 2 circumstances. Number 1, a statement begins in the singular but drifts into the plural. The following sentence is incorrect. Okay, I'll just have to read it. An information manager needs to know whether they are doing their job properly. The easiest solution to this problem is to make both the subject and the verb plural. Like, okay, information managers need to know whether they are doing their jobs properly. Number 2, collective nouns cause confusion. So, following sentence is incorrect. The government are passing new legislation. Since there is just one government in the example given, the sentence should read, the government is passing new legislation. Okay, so once you know this rule for written work, you will notice that in spoken English, it is often broken. Okay, so for example, you would say, there's 4 of them here, or there are 4 of them here. Whilst this is acceptable in spoken English, it is not for formal written work. Make sure that you get this right in your written projects. Okay, so similarly, students or writers should watch out for other instances where the influence of speech may have an adverse effect on writing. Okay, so rule number 3, you must use appropriate punctuation. So if you are in any doubt about punctuation, use as little as possible and write short, direct sentences. It is perfectly possible to write a good piece of work using only the comma and then full stop. Okay, so what are commas for? Commas are used to denote a weak pause in a sentence. If you find that you write in long sentences, check whether it might be better create several short sentences replacing commas with full stops. Okay, what about dashes and hyphens? Okay, try to minimize the use of dashes in your formal work. They can give the impression of a style that is too chatty. They may be used in pairs to insert an explanatory comment or short list. Okay, like each member of staff, from the most junior to the chief executive, is invited to comment on the plans. So dashes should not be used as a substitute for parentheses or mixed with them. And then hyphens are used to connect prefixes to words like CD-ROM, okay, or when forming compounds such as second in command. Okay, so what about exclamation marks? Okay, we use exclamation marks as little as possible in formal work because they give the work a juvenile and overexcited tone. Okay, so what about full stops? Full stops are not needed after titles like Dr., Mrs., nor they are actually required to well-known company titles such as IBM. You don't have to put to have full stops there. Again, what about question marks? It is unlikely that you should use the question mark in the work you submit. So after all, you are meant to be answering the question, not posting any new ones. Okay, what about colons? The colon is used to introduce a strong pause within a sentence. So it actually separates two clauses which could stand alone or separate sentences but are linked by some relationship in their meanings. Okay. Okay, there are actually 4 instances in which you might use a colon. Colon can introduce a list. So the job placement entails various duties. And then setting up a database, liaising with customers, ordering suppliers, and taking minutes at meetings. So a colon can actually precede a long quotation. A colon can be used before a clause, which explains the previous statement. And a colon can be used to indicate a sharp contrast. And then we also have here semicolons. You should only use the semicolon if you know how to use it properly. It is difficult to identify when to use it since it represents a pause that is longer than a comma but shorter than a full stop. Okay, so there are actually four main uses of the semicolons. Okay, so a semicolon is used when a second clause expands or explains the first. Another one, a semicolon is used to describe a sequence of actions or different aspects of the same topic. Then a semicolon is used before clauses which begin with nevertheless, okay? Therefore, even so, and for instance. And a semicolon is used to mark off a series of phrases or clauses which contain commas. Okay, so rule number 4, you must use the right vocabulary. Okay, it is important that you use the right vocabulary in your work. Okay, the mistakes that crop up regularly in any scholarly work are usually due to confusion between two words like affect, effect, quote, quotation. Okay, the first is actually the verb and the second is a noun. Dependent and dependent, alternate and alternative, principal and principal, and then less and fewer. Okay, we have here rule number 5. You must use the apostrophe correctly and of course with care. Do not forget that. Okay, the apostrophe has 2 functions. It indicates the possessive case and contractions. For the possessive case, an example could be the information manager's work. And for contraction, we're for we are, don't for do not, can't for cannot, and it's for it is. Okay. So we have here possessive. We also have here some examples of the use of possessive objectives. Okay, so the information manager has been in her job for 10 months. So the job belongs to her. The organization prepared its information strategy in 2013, so the information strategy belongs to it. Their market sector is in decline, so the market sector belongs to them. Okay, now we move on to the second part, which is conventions in academic writing. So we have here three again. So style conventions, numbers and dates, capitals, print enhancements, abbreviations, typing and spelling. For tone conventions, we have formal, jargon, cliche-free, impersonal writing. And number three, we have forming arguments, how to turn your information into a well-written essay or report. Okay. For style conventions, there are numbers and dates. Okay, are examples. Okay, dates are usually given in the conventional combinations of numbered day, named month, and number year. For example, the date today is 9 October 2022. Punctuation is not required. Okay, so references to centuries are actually spelled out. For example, this 1990s. That in the 1990s, the term internet became a media buzzword also. So capital letters are used for, okay, do not forget, they are used for proper nouns or even names of civic holidays. For print enhancements, like for example, the APA referencing. And then for the abbreviations, okay, so abbreviations are not used in the formal English. They give the impression of a style that is chatty and too informal, actually. So, for instance, when you want to introduce an example in your work, you should use in full the phrase, for example. When you are taking notes in class, you may like to use abbreviation for example. Okay, the Latin term exempli gratia is actually written as EG. Okay, do not confuse EG with IE because IE is an abbreviation of the Latin phrase id est and means, that is to say, or in other words. Okay, what about typing and spelling? Even if you are good at spelling, you cannot make typing errors. All work for submission should be spelled and check before it is printed out. So make sure that the spell checker you use is set in UK English. All printouts should then be proofread. Okay? If there are still mistakes in your work, you should correct. Spell check and proofread again until you are satisfied that all mistakes are eradicated. Don't be lazy about proofreading. Your lecturers expect you to hand in your best work. So if you hand in work that is below the standard of what you could achieve with more care and attention, you are doing yourself a big disfavor. This may be perpetuated when lecturers are asked to comment on your progress in formal situations, for example, when writing references. Okay. So there are some words that writers regularly misspell. Okay, it is worth learning the spelling of this, bearing in mind the hints on how to remember the correct spelling. For example, for accommodation. Okay, so think plenty of room for 2 times C and 2 times M. So that would be accommodation. And then next is apparent. Think about parent. And then for definite, think about infinity. And then for layas, think 2xi liaising with one another. And then for necessary, think it's necessary to wear one color and two socks. Okay. Then for occasionally, think it would be rare to wear two colors and one sock. Okay, so do we get it? And tone conventions. Okay. For tone conventions here, we have write formally. So a report or essay is a formal piece of work. So the tone of your work should be formal and not chatty. For example, rather than beginning sentence with the word also or besides, which gives the impression that that what you are about to write is an afterthought, use an alternative such as in addition. Similarly, the word however is more appropriate to start a sentence in a formal piece of work rather than using but. Okay, so the use of brackets should be kept to a minimum also. They are used to indicate a supplementary remark. Okay, so an authorial aside or a qualification of some sort, use them too frequently and you end up with a choppy effect. Square brackets are used to indicate additions or changes that the author has made to the text. Okay, so for example, if you want to illustrate a point with a quotation, it may be necessary to add a couple of words by way of explanation. Okay, so the new legislation means that so put the brackets, software companies may be liable for mistakes. Okay, it's also important that you have to avoid cliches. So a cliche is an expression that has been so overused that it has lost its force of meaning. Phrases such as at the touch of a button and at their fingertips should not appear in your work. To use a cliche, they should be avoided like the plague. If you feel tempted to write with a cliche, you are probably about to state the obvious, which is not worthwhile given the word limits on your work. Okay, so avoid journalists also. Make sure that you are not that you have not written work in an exaggerated or sensational style. You are not a journalist. Your work should read as measured by set of rational arguments. If you say nothing bold, this should be backed up with a reference from the literature you have consulted in preparing your work, or by an example that proves your point. Also, avoid jargon. Use the jargon for your subject area with precision, accuracy, and of course, constraint. Take special care with terms that have specialized meanings in your subject area. For example, the terms tacit and explicit have specific meanings in the context of knowledge management. Okay, what about the impersonal writer? It is rare that you would be expected to write in the first person singular using the word I when preparing essays and reports in the subject area of computing. Some people get around this by using the third person singular, but this can be very clumsy. You should aim to write impersonally. The idea is that you remove any personal bias from the argument when you write impersonally. Okay. It is also important to check the following three sentences to see how this is achieved. Okay, number one, I conducted a survey on the use of social media in schools. Okay, so that is the first person singular. Number two, the author conducted a survey on the use of social media in schools. So the third person singular is used here. And number three, a survey was conducted on the use of social media in schools, which is an impersonal writing. Okay, so note that some grammar checkers will question the use of the passive voice also. It is argued that the use of the passive makes the text heavy. This can be the case. In many cases, it is appropriate to use the active voice. For example, in writing an instruction leaflet or creating an exciting narrative in a work of fiction. However, in academic work, the use of the passive voice is wholly appropriate when the goal is to present a set of arguments in an unbiased way. It also permits the construction of short, neat sentences. Okay, so let us also try to consider the following examples. Okay, so the researchers administered the questionnaires over a period of 3 days. That could be an example of an active voice. It took 3 days to administer the questionnaires. That is written in a passive voice. Okay, so what about forming arguments now? So for sensible use of paragraphs, assignment specifications give you few words to write up whatever you are writing. You must make the most of them. As you structure your work, ensure that each section offers a different perspective of the issue under discussion, and that you present a logical development of a clear line of thought. Okay, so a paragraph deals with just one topic or major point of an argument relevant to the essay or whatever you are writing. The topic or argument should normally be announced in the opening sentence. This is sometimes called the topic sentence. So the sentences which immediately follow the topic sentence should expand and develop the statement, explaining its significance to the question in general. So this opening statement and amplification should be then followed by evidence to support the argument being made. You should provide illustrative examples which are discussed as an explanation of the central idea. Alternatively, you can quote a source that supports your argument. The last sentence of a paragraph should round off the consideration of a topic in some way. It may also contain some statement which links it to the one which follows. Okay, so paragraphs should normally be between 50 words with minimum and 200 words maximum in length. However, they might be longer if you were explaining a topic in considerable detail in an extended way. Paragraphs should be long enough to develop a point, not just state it. Consecutive paragraphs may be linked in terms such as however, so as to provide a sense of continuity in your argument. However, if you are in any doubt, let them stand separately and speak for themselves. Okay, so the recommended organization of a typical paragraph is opening topic sentence, that is the main point given. Okay, explanation of topic sentence, supporting sentences that explain its significance, discussion of examples of or evidence, and of course, number 5, concluding sentence. Sometimes, even though you have a set of arguments crafted into good paragraphs, it is difficult to work out how to order them in the written up version of academic writing. Okay, so it is possible to play around with the structure by writing the main point of each paragraph onto separate pieces of card. Okay, experimenting with ordering the cards so that eventually associated cards end up next to each other in logical sequence. Number 3, writing on a separate sheet of paper the order of topics. Number 4, numbering the topics on the sheet of paper to show a hierarchy which reflects the logic of the other order of paragraphs. Okay, you now have the order of the components of your written task. You then have to consider how to link one paragraph to the next in the text so that there is an adequate signposting and guidance for the reader. Okay, you can check that the links work by means of, so underlining linking words and phrases, asking someone else to read through your work and asking that person to explain how the paragraphs relate to each other. Okay, so a well-structured assignment or written work typically has the following format. So it begins with an introduction which provides the reader with the indication of the direction the report or essay will take before conclusions can be drawn. Paragraph 1 that makes claims relevant to the question set and central to all overall argument of the work presents evidence to back up claims made, and ends with a linking statement to paragraph 2. Paragraph 2 that makes claims relevant to the question set and central to the overall argument of the work. Present evidence to back up claims made, and ends with a linking statement to paragraph 3. Okay. So paragraph 3 that makes claims relevant to the question set and central to the overall argument of the work. Presents evidence to back up claims made, and ends with a linking statement to paragraph 4, and so on until the main points are made. It ends with the conclusion, which relates back to the introduction, where what the report set out to do has been noted. It concludes on the evidence presented in the main text of the report itself. Okay. So if you are tempted to use phrase such as already mentioned, as explained above, or aforementioned, check that you are the only providing link back to earlier arguments rather than simply repeating them. If you are using repetition and waffle as a strategy to make your written work meet the recommended word length, you need to think carefully about how well you have prepared to write up your written work. It is likely that you have not gathered enough information or read adequately for the written work if this is the case. So, no matter how well presented your work is, to pass your academic writing, you must answer questions set. The work that you present should be relevant to the discussion. There is always some description in written researches, but it is the degree of analysis, what is described, that is valued by those marking the work. This might be described as the so what factor of your work. You will be rewarded for linking ideas together to draw conclusions or discussing the implications of what you have described. You will be rewarded for questioning the material that you have researched, for preparing your written work. You will not be rewarded for simply listening everything that you have discovered on a topic. So as you progress through undergraduate studies to graduate studies, the degree of analytical ability assumes greater importance. Okay, so these are my references. For that, thank you very much for listening.
Wow, Prof, the way you started it was so wonderful. I really enjoyed this wonderful presentation and wonderful content which you just presented with our audience from around the globe. And what a nice way you have connected all the dots. I really enjoyed the way you started it from the how to make distinction between what is your argument or what is your concept and what the other people are saying. It means that you must establish your own argument while mentioning it clear that what you are saying and what you are referring to the other authors. What are nice steps you have mentioned, and followed by the wonderful tips and your wonderful explanation that you were explaining so many things in a wonderful way. And I love your sentence that write all the time. That phrase is so wonderful because the more you write, the more you will develop this skill, because writing is kind of skill, and the more you write it, the more you will come to know what mistakes you are doing, but followed by the wonderful science which you have shared with our audience, that which steps needs to be followed and what are the different rules which needs to be considered, because it's the systematic and organized activity, and we must follow certain rules and regulations. And you very nicely mentioned the role of different, right from the commas to the apostrophe, and how we are going to use it. And I love one of your sentence that don't be lazy in proofreading. What a nice sentence you have said it, because that's the wonderful part. And sometimes we think that it doesn't matter, but actually that makes the our work more qualitative when people they read our work as an audience. And very nicely you have mentioned that don't write from the writer perspective, also see your work from the audience perspective. Are they getting what they want to are they getting what you are supposed to telling them, or it conveys some certain different messages? So all of the presentation and the content was so great in a way that you connected every dot in a wonderful way. And these are the things which actually the student they lack, and sometimes they don't know how to connect it properly. And I love one of your wonderful thing that was the how to develop the tone convention. That is the very important. Sometimes we miss the tone and terminologies appropriately using at appropriate time. That's, I think, the things which needs to be considered. And through your wonderful content, I hope the audience will make it more wonderful by following the principles properly, and they will make their writing skills in a organized and systematic way. Thank you for such a wonderful presentation, Prof. And that brings me to the question answer session. Should we start with the first question, please? Yeah. So, Prof, the first question they want to ask, they want to compliment your presentation. Prof, you presented it very well. It was a very thorough presentation. Please share your opinion that what are the most popular reasons for examiners to call a thesis or any research article a poor written thesis or article? What are the major popular reasons for calling any manuscript as a poor written? Yes, please, from examiner perspective.
When we cannot comprehend what they have what they have written, professor, that is actually a great problem here, because as I have experienced also as a peer reviewer, there are some instances when you are given a manuscript that you do not even understand the direction of the statements. So when you do not understand the statements being written there, I would say that the manuscript is poorly written.
Very nice, Prof. I think that's the wonderful part you have shared to our audience, that they must look after that. Are they able to convey the message they want to convey properly or not? Whether we are getting the right kind of understanding out of it or not. Prof, one another very interesting question they want to ask that with regard to the academic writing, please, Prof, share your experiences. There are several software available for writing improvement online. Do you recommend it, or will it change my context and content because they include everyday words, not the academic words? Please share your experience. Yes, please.
My experience is that I usually read vastly, professor, before and I take down notes. Taking down notes is really very important, so as not to forget. And then when you are taking down notes, you should also be writing the authors, or the researchers who have actually done that research, so that it will be easier for you to write. Now, in terms of the academic terms that we use, we actually work in different fields, and we should actually use the terms which are understood in the field that we are in. Because if we use other terms not related to our field, it will be harder for people connected in this field to understand what we mean. That is why we have to be very careful in using terms, and actually getting ideas from other authors or writers, so that it will be easier for us to present later on our ideas, and of course, and the way the manuscript is to be written. That is actually
Wow.
very important, professor.
Yeah, that's wonderful answer once again. Thank you very much, Prof. I'm enjoying the way you are answering it. One another very interesting question from the one of the researcher and student. They want to ask that, Prof, please share your opinion that why don't we have the academic writing course at our master level, just like the research methodology class, because it is science, it is organized activity, and we need a specific teacher to explain the academic writing as you explained in this wonderful presentation. Why the universities are not considering a particular subject in masters which just tell us the academic writing principles and steps? Yes, your opinion on that, please.
I would say that the academic writing is not really, it may not be part of the curriculum. That is why it is not being taught in the graduate school, Professor. But I would also say, like just like you, that it should also be included, so that this will actually give everyone a piece of the cake, as we say, and it will be easier for us to do our manuscript from, as I've mentioned, from our undergraduate to our graduate studies. This is a big help for everyone. Maybe if we will have some meetings or evaluation of our curriculum, we there is a possibility that we actually recommend that academic writing should really be included in the curriculum of our undergraduate up to the graduate studies of universities, Professor.
Yes, Prof. Very nicely said. And because there is a requirement for this subject as well, because we have a series of workshops and seminars we do arrange for our students, particularly related to academic writing, because it's a very technical one, and we want our students, they should learn this technique and how to do it in a proper way. Prof, one another interesting question they want to ask that please, Prof, share your experience in writing your own thesis. What was the biggest challenge you faced when you were writing your thesis? It was literature review, introduction, methodology, conclusion, or discussion. Which part was more challenging for you when you were writing your thesis? Yes, please.
I would say it was the literature review, because I had to look for international, local, and then I had to look for books and other researches that have been done in the past. And sometimes, especially for researches, they become limited. Some topics are actually limited. That's why it could also, our literature could also be limited. We get limited resources. That is why sometimes it's also very hard to get or to access international references, especially when we do not have connections in the international arena, Professor. That is why our connections now, the way we are connected with some colleagues in the international arena, I would say that at this point, if I compare it when I had my thesis, it is easier to get international references now, because just like you, we can actually tap people now because of our connections in the international arena, Professor.
Thank you very much, Prof, for such an elaborative answer. And Prof, now we have one comment for from our faculty member as well. They want to comment that Prof, your presentation was so great, very informative. Thank you very much for such a wonderful presentation. And Prof, I would like to add one thing that you can improve your writing skills by reading the more. And one of the problem we have identified in our student is they read very less, particularly the books. They only concern the manuscripts only, which
Yes.
is not the true reflection. I think very
Yes.
nice comment the faculty member have done. So it means that we should be reading a lot of books in order to understand
Yes.
the academic terminologies and to reproduce the same words in a nice way.
Yes,
Bro,
that's correct.
yeah. The last question, which is very interesting as well. One of the student is seeking your guidance. He wants to say that, Prof, one of my examiner has commented that I should revise my thesis without damaging the context of the thesis in a logical flow. But he has not explained how to connect logical flow. Please guide me what the examiner meant by logical flow. Yes, please.
Okay, as I've said, I have always, and even not only to my students, I have also said this to my children, that when making that logical flow that they say, I would say that in making a research, there should be a story behind the flow of the ideas should create a story to make it better. the story should really be created so that the flow will be better. Maybe in that case, there are some glitches in the way the statements were presented or the theories were presented. That is why when making research, it is important that there should be a story that you have to make.
Wow, very nice, Prof. You see, Prof, for you it's very easy, but for the people around the globe, particularly the student, they are facing these kind of problems. And once you people are there to guide them, it makes them very easy to understand and to carry on their research journey very well. So, Prof, really wonderful explanation and powerful content you share with our audience from around the globe. I really enjoyed this session with you. At the end of the session, we ask our each guest about their message to the world. So, Prof, what is your message to the world as a speaker, author, teacher, researcher, trainer, learner, professional, and educator? Yes, please.
Let us not get tired of learning. We should always continue, no matter how or what age you are. We should always continue learning, grasp theories that are really important, and let's not stop learning.
Wow. Wow, Prof. What a wonderful message you have given to the world. Keep on learning, and through
Yes.
learning, we can transform our lives and we can contribute to the world in a positive way. Wonderful message, Prof. Thank you very much once again. And to the audience, please do follow our distinguished guest speaker through her research work, and you can email her for future learning and guidance. She is very generous and always ready to help the people. Uh, that's all we have time for today. Thank you once again, Dr. Bliss
Thank
Medical.
you also. Thank you. And you're always welcome, Professor.
It was a wonderful session with you, Prof. And I
Thank
would like
you.
to thank our audience who joined us. If you have any additional questions about the information shared today, please email us or connect to the speaker directly through her email or social media account. Thank you all for your support and liking our session. Stay tuned as many sessions are on the way. Please do not miss any session. Until next session, take care of yourself. Bye bye.
Bye bye.